You know, when you think about it, just about everyone is in debt. Every major country, the biggest corporations, and a lot of us personally. And when you add it all up, the total is just staggering. It raises this one simple but massive question that, for some reason, almost nobody ever asks.
Okay, take a good look at this number. That's $317 trillion. That is the grand total of all the debt on planet Earth. It's a figure so immense our brains can't really even process it. Let me try to put it into perspective for you. If you're lucky enough to spend $1 million every single day, it would still take you over 868,000 years to get through that much money. It's just mind-boggling.
Another way to look at it is this. That debt is 330% of global GDP. So imagine if we could freeze the entire world's economy and take every single dollar from every product made, every service provided for a whole year. You'd still be nowhere near paying it off. You'd have to do that for more than 3 years straight, with nobody eating or buying anything, by the way, just to wipe the slate clean.
And this, right here, is the central mystery. If the United States is a borrower, China's a borrower, Japan, Germany, you name it, and all the big corporations are borrowers too, then who exactly is the lender? If everyone owes all this money, who do they owe it to? That's the $317 trillion question we're going to answer today.
All right, so to solve this mystery, we have to start with a fundamental, unbreakable rule about debt.
And it's actually pretty simple. Debt is a zero-sum game. For every single dollar of debt, there has to be a matching dollar of credit somewhere else. For every borrower, there's a lender. It's a two-way street. So if the world owes $317 trillion, it means that someone somewhere owns $317 trillion in assets. It has to balance out. But to find out who the lenders are, we first need to understand how this gigantic mountain of debt is even created in the first place. And let me tell you, it's probably not how you think it works.
Most of us have this idea that a bank takes in people's savings, puts it in a vault, and then lends that existing money out. Makes sense, right? Well, that's not what happens. In our modern financial system, the very act of large-scale borrowing, especially by governments, actually creates brand new money, literally out of thin air.
So here's how it goes down. The US government needs to raise, say, $1 trillion. It issues bonds. Then the central bank and big commercial banks come in and buy those bonds. But here's the kicker. They don't dip into some pre-existing pile of cash to do it. They essentially just create the money on the spot with a few keystrokes on a digital ledger. And poof, $1 trillion that did not exist a moment ago is now in the system.
So the bank creates the loan itself. That's called the principal. But what about the interest on that loan? Well, this is the absolute crucial point. When that $1 trillion is created, only the principal is brought into existence. The money that's needed to pay the interest is never created at all.
And this right here creates what some call a mathematical trap. I mean, if the money to pay the interest doesn't exist, where's it supposed to come from? Well, it has to be borrowed too. This forces a system of perpetual borrowing, where new, bigger debts have to be taken on just to make the interest payments on the old debts. It guarantees the total amount of debt can only grow forever. And the sources we're looking at say this isn't a mistake, it's the design.
Okay, so now that we know how the debt gets made, we can finally pull back the curtain and see who's on the other side of that $317 trillion transaction. So who are the lenders?
They fall into 4 main groups. The biggest piece of the pie, about $120 trillion, is held by institutional investors. Think massive pension funds and insurance companies. Next up, you've got wealthy individuals and their family offices holding around $40 trillion. Foreign governments hold about $30 trillion, and central banks themselves hold $25 trillion. But just knowing these categories, well, that's not the full story.
The real question is, who's actually controlling these organizations? Well, central banks, like the Federal Reserve in the US, are private institutions owned by their big member banks. Those institutional investors are run by a very small management class. Foreign governments' holdings are controlled by their political elites. And of course, the fourth group is the world's top 1% directly. You start to see a clear pattern here. The lenders are a small global elite operating through these huge institutions that they control.
And if you think this is some kind of newfangled system, you'd be wrong. In fact, this is all based on a playbook that's been around for at least 800 years.
Just look at the history. Back in the 1400s, the Medici family gained incredible power by lending money to kings and popes. Then in 1694, the Private Bank of England was created for the specific purpose of lending money to the government and charging interest. By 1815, the Rothschild family had perfected this model on a massive scale. And then in 1913, the US created the Federal Reserve, using that same Bank of England blueprint. The model has always been the same: private groups lend to governments and profit from the public debt.
This quote, attributed to Nathan Rothschild, just says it all. The connection is explicit. Controlling the money supply is the same as controlling the empire. This isn't just a business, it's the ultimate lever of power.
So if this system is designed for debt to grow forever, and it's designed to concentrate wealth and power, where does it all go from here? What is the inevitable endgame?
Well, the problem comes down to some really simple math. Global debt is growing about 7% a year, but the global economy, the engine that's supposed to pay it all back, is only growing at 3%. The debt is expanding more than twice as fast as our ability to pay for it. That path is by definition completely unsustainable.
And every single year, this system funnels a massive amount of wealth from the bottom to the top. Out of roughly $15 trillion paid in global interest each year, the top 1% alone captures about $6 trillion of it. That is wealth flowing directly from taxpayers, workers, and homeowners straight into the pockets of the creditor class.
So what does this actually mean for an ordinary person? Well, to make it really personal, the average American will end up paying about $1.4 million in interest, both direct and indirect, over their lifetime. That's a huge portion of their life's work, flowing from them straight to the top of that financial pyramid.
Now, since this debt load can't grow faster than the economy forever, there are really only 3 ways this can end. First, a massive default, where governments just stop paying, which would collapse the whole financial system. Second, runaway inflation, where governments just print trillions of dollars to make the payments, destroying the value of everyone's savings. Or third, something called a debt jubilee, a radical, systemic cancellation and restructuring of all debt, a total reset.
But here is the final and most provocative claim from the source material we're looking at. The collapse of this system isn't seen as an accident, it's considered a feature. The argument is that it's designed to concentrate wealth in 2 phases. First, on the way up, through interest payments, and then, once again on the way down, during the crash, by allowing the creditor class to use their capital to buy up hard assets, land, real estate, infrastructure, from everyone else for pennies on the dollar.
So, we've answered the $317 trillion question. The lender is, ultimately, a small global elite operating a system seemingly engineered for perpetual debt and wealth concentration. But answering that question only raises a new, much more urgent one for all of us. As this system creaks and groans towards its mathematical limits, what comes next?